All right, this is your Bolo Punch Boxing Hour brought to you by George Rogie Insurance. Timmy, the producer, Patterson. How can our listeners get in touch tonight?
Hit us up on the hotline, 219-743-9743. Yahoo Instant Messenger is up and running. Keyword Bolo Punch Boxing Hour. But the best way to reach us is in the chat room via Ustream.tv.
Tonight, live on the show, our special guest, Ray Flores. He is a ring announcer. He is a manager. He is a trainer. He is an artist. He is everything that a man should be. He's also one hell of a flamenco dancer. This is Ray, Mr. Hollywood Flores. Ray, what's going on, brother?
Gentlemen, it's always great to talk to you guys. I have been working on my flamenco dancing, which is why I've been a little occupied on Thursday night. But you know what? I do tune in to Bolo Punch Boxing Hour on Thursdays after my flamenco dancing lessons. And we are good to go, guys. It's great to be back on the program.
Very, very good. We've already talked about Ricky Hatton. We've already talked about Antonio Tarver. Both big losers in the last couple of weeks. Give us your thoughts. What does this really mean?
You know what? I couldn't hear the question, guys.
Yeah.
Hello?
Ray, you there?
Yeah, I'm here, guys. I'm here. I couldn't hear the question. Sorry about that.
Oh, I'm sorry. No. Ricky Hatton being the big loser a couple of weeks ago, and Antonio Tarver being the big loser this past weekend. I mean, what are your thoughts on those two fights? I mean.
You know what? Ricky Hatton to me was always an overblown quantity. I mean, he was basically a product of those Manchester fans that really loved and adored him. And I always thought, I put him in the class as the poor man's version of Oscar De La Hoya. Reason being because he had one defining fight, and that was being Costazoo. Now, that's all he really has had in my eyes. My grandmother punches harder than Paulie Malignaggi. Paulie Malignaggi has style, but he's all flash and no dash. It would be the equivalent if De La Hoya would have just beat Chavez, and that was it. A big box office draw, but if he would have just beat Chavez, and that was his biggest win, then that would have been it. So I've never really been overly impressed with Ricky Hatton. I think he's gotten more credit and more coverage than what he needs it. And I think Manny Pacquiao went out there and showed everybody that Ricky Hatton is nowhere near the league of an upper echelon fighter like himself, who is the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world. Antonio Tarver losing to Chad Dawson, it's the passing of the torch. Not passing of the torch, but it's showing that Father Time has finally caught up with Antonio Tarver. He can do all the talking, he can say this, he can say that, he can antagonize the young guy, but when you have a young fighter who's in the prime of his career, physically and mentally, even though you have an old vet like Antonio Tarver, you still cannot beat a guy who is in his physical and mental prime. There are only a couple of guys who can defy Father Time. Bernard Hopkins is one of them, and Antonio Tarver is no Bernard Hopkins.
No, he is not. Well said on both of those.
I actually read a magazine article, an interview.
So your wife read it to you?
With Ricky Hatton's former trainer.
Okay.
He actually said he thought it was time for Ricky to retire. Actually, we're talking about this every time Pacquiao fights somebody. They say it's time for that guy to retire.
It's time for them to retire.
And he was saying that he thought actually Pacquiao lost, or Hatton lost a lot when he fought Mayweather, and it really showed when he fought Pacquiao.
I could say that. Ray Flores, you are a guru with boxing, but you are the man on the mountain when it comes to MMA. What's all this talk that I'm hearing about Kimbo Slice, one of the biggest names in your sport, possibly wanting to try on the gloves of my sport?
Bad move, guys. Chris, bad move written all over it. Kimbo Slice is a guy that with those 4-ounce gloves can really pack a punch. It's tough to take him down, but if he were to go in there against a fighter that has decent potential, decent pure boxing ability, Kimbo Slice is in some big trouble. He's a big, you might as well throw him in there with Butterbean for crying out loud. Kimbo Slice, he's a wild puncher, doesn't really have much style to him, no flair, no really tactical brilliance or technique. He's just a wild brawler that will throw a lot of punches, things along those lines. Guys, I do not want to see Kimbo Slice get into the boxing ring and go in there and fight boxing. He needs to stick to MMA and realize that his punching power is only as good as those 4-ounce gloves in MMA.
Do you really think that he has a lot to offer in the world of MMA when he got knocked out by...
He's more of an attraction than anything, guys. He is an absolute attraction. I've never really been impressed with Kimbo Slice in MMA, but you know what? He's a guy that can go out there and beat inferior competition. In boxing, his falls would be greatly exposed without the shadow of a doubt. I mean, you want to talk about going in there against decent fighters or below-average fighters, and he'll look silly. That's exactly what will happen. He's an attraction in MMA. Bob Sapp has lasted in MMA for the past 5 or 6 years. No reason why Kimbo Slice can't do that. To take him seriously is one thing, but to be able to make big box office draw, Kimbo Slice can certainly do that in MMA without a doubt.
Can you talk to me and all our listeners at home about Roy Jones Jr. possibly wanting to jump into the MMA ring? I mean, he's already been promoting for one event. Now he's actually throwing actual challenges out to Anderson Silva, who is your sport's middleweight champion. And there's another MMA fighter, a UFC fighter, whose name escapes me right now, who was plastered all over the news attached to Roy recently.
Yeah, you know what? Roy Jones Jr. wants no part, should not want any part of MMA whatsoever. I mean, he's one of the best proper box fighters in the world, the king of the mountain. The guy has tremendous hand speed. But when he gets taken down, if you were to be in a legitimate MMA fight, inside the octagon or in the ring, whatever MMA entity he wants to get into, there is no way he can handle it. And he's right now preparing himself for the takedowns and the submissions and the brutality that he would be succumbed to and exposed to if he were to actually have an MMA fight. Roy wants to talk and really do it for big money. I'd love to get my butt kicked for $15 million in 2 minutes to get my butt handed to me.
Sure.
And that's exactly what will happen to Roy Jones Jr. He would immediately be a couple of guys slipping some punches. They get him down on the ground. Roy won't know what to do. The fact that he's older means he couldn't properly hit something up and use his power to explode out and get taken down. And he'd be in big trouble. Once those elbows start landing on you, it is a totally different world. Roy, he does not want any part of MMA. Heck of a fighter, but no part of MMA whatsoever. He's too old, guys. Maybe if he was 8 or 9 years younger, I'd say possibly.
No.
Possibly. But
Well,
he doesn't want any part of this.
You got to remember, Roy wasn't just a boxer. He actually, I believe, played in the CBA a little bit.
He did some basketball too. We can't forget, by the way, here, Ray, that Roy Jones. I started it with you can't forget. You can't. You got to remember, and I can't even remember what I was going to say because you threw me off with your CBA stuff. But
Well,
go ahead.
Well, Jeff Kern is a fighter out of Chicago, MMA fighter, and they're kind of pumping him up as a boxing MMA guy. He's only had 5 boxing fights, and the guys that he's fighting are pretty much bums, and he doesn't even have a great record against them. I don't know if his boxing skills would translate much like a Roy Jones would,
What I was going to say, Ray, is that Muhammad Ali 30 years ago fought in what is essentially an MMA fight against a Oriental wrestler, professional wrestler named Antonio Inaki. And I know that a good friend of mine, Pete Perry, is going to burn up the instant message now that I'm making an Ali Inoki comparison here. But Ali did it. Why can't Roy do this?
Because, guys, that was just an attraction. That wasn't an actual fight where in a party, Muhammad Ali wasn't going in there to get destroyed. Inoki wasn't going to go in there and try to destroy him. These guys, if he fights Anderson Silva or any average UFC fighter, they're going out there to hurt Roy Jones Jr. and to teach him a lesson. That was merely an attraction. Everybody knew it was all for, let's see what can happen. Let's laugh about it. Let's make it an attraction. Let's make it a spectacle, even though they're not going to throw anything. Roy Jones Jr. gets in there to fight an average UFC fighter. Give me anybody in the UFC, the 170 on up, and they destroy Roy Jones because they are in their physical prime, and also the fact that they want to go ahead and they want to hurt Roy. That is exactly what they want to do. I mean, I would not even suggest Roy Jones to do that. I mean, his talent's been lost in boxing a little bit, diminished skills. In MMA, you want to talk about being exposed. He would certainly be exposed if he were to enter the world of the octagon or any credible MMA entity or organization.
All right. Ray Flores, we thank you so much for coming on Bolo Punch. We will talk to you very soon, my brother.
Hey, guys, you guys are my favorite show on Thursday night with the exception of my flamingo dancing and all the tango
Awesome.
stuff, guys. I really appreciate it.